how you're supporting your sleep, managing your stress, and really just getting meaning out of the activities you do every day. So we're learning a lot about all these different facets. And then ultimately, of course, we want to research what are the best ways to help individuals improve, support their brain health and function, and even brain performance over the lifespan. So our hope is to continue to move toward more precision brain health. Again, recognizing that no two people are the same, therefore no two brains are the same. So it's important that we really explore these different paths and opportunities that we have to support our day-to-day brain health. So these continue to be our North Star objectives in the project. Next slide. So in fact, it's been exciting because we've been able to build on, some really brain health breakthroughs that drove us into this work, and are continuing to really realize some of these other breakthroughs as we move forward. So wanted to just kind of share those in a quick nutshell with you. So I alluded to, for example, the one at the top that says measure. We've already seen, now that we are 4 years into the project, brain health can be measured in some meaningful ways, and in a way that really allows us to capture gain, again, through the lens of health and wellness and gain, as opposed to just through the lens of deficit or decline. The other piece, kind of back over to the left, that brain health can be enhanced. We've already been showing some really encouraging preliminary findings around the potential for brain gain, given some of these strategy-based tools. So those of you who have engaged with the training side, as you know, we really kicked it off with our SMART strategies, our strategic memory advanced reasoning training, which is focused on cognitive strategies as a starting point, or a launching pad, if you will, for engaging these other brain health supports. The neural biomarkers, we're going to talk about that a little bit today with some of the initial findings coming out of sort of our sub-study of the project that involves individuals who are actually doing brain scans, neuroimaging in conjunction with each of their BrainHealth Index time points. So this is particularly moving us closer and closer to that precision brain health, seeing those different patterns in activity that might predict who would benefit most from different approaches. The one at the bottom that says scale, this has also been a wonderful opportunity for us to see how brain health not only can be made more accessible, but can be done at larger scales. So whether that's engaging with workplaces, we'll share some results that are coming out about that. Schools, that's where we've had a lot of engagement at the Center for Brain Health with public schools doing these in classrooms. And now really a focus on communities. So thinking about ways to extend this to communities that maybe don't typically have as much access to brain health or wellness supporting tools. And then lastly, the Brainomics. This one's a really emerging aspect to the field of brain health. It's really looking at it through the lens of not what is the cost burden on our economy of poor brain health, but rather what are the economic benefits of boosting brain health for all people, and seeing how that can impact people, not just individually or within your community, but even potentially societally. So in fact, we have an economist on our team now who is leading this new Brainomics venture. So we'll see, more things kind of integrating into the project that will give us some lens into some of those impacts as well. Next slide. I'll pass it back to you, Julie.
All right. So one thing I actually want to say really quick before moving on is that I didn't say in the beginning is that I know it might have shown up on your dashboard as a group coaching session, but just want to distinguish that this is a town hall, which is slightly different, so much more information based, and it's really our opportunity to share with you the updates and kind of just status and progress of the research itself. And so we do these a couple times a year. And so it's obviously the webinar style format. So if you do have questions, use the Q&A box. We'll have a little bit of time at the end where we can try to answer some of your questions. But really, this is just a special time for us to really keep you in the loop and help you, as you are contributing to research. We want you to be able to see the tangible discoveries that we are making and really invite you into that, because it's not possible without you. So that's also just part of the reason for wanting to do these. So this is a recap of just the first paper published. That was kind of the initial pilot, the first 3 months that we did with the BrainHealth Project. And so really the two big takeaways from this paper were that 75% of participants were able to show a significant gain on their BrainHealth Index that was not dependent on age, gender, or education, which is huge. So this is really exciting to show that, kind of this proof of concept idea that we can have an online platform, do online assessments and online training, and people are able to make gains. And this was specifically during a very stressful time of being right when the pandemic had hit. So even more just really exciting to see that it didn't depend on, your age or your life stage. And the contribution to these gains were from all different areas. So it wasn't just like gains in one particular brain area, but really from stress and anxiety to resilience to training that was focused on cognition. And so, yeah, this was really the pilot study that showed the effectiveness of personalized measures and training protocols, which is really setting the stage for this continued on longitudinal research study with this idea to really revolutionize how we're thinking about global brain health and wellness. And so from this pilot study that we started in March of 2020, the majority of these folks have continued on with us and have been with us for years now, which is really wonderful. So if you're one of those people, special thank you for sticking with us. And then one of the big findings that really came out of that first pilot paper was these factors. So if you've taken a brain health index, you have seen kind of the little images with the different size circles or kind of branches on the tree. And that is clarity, connectedness to both people and purpose, and then emotional balance. And then of course we have neural systems, and then we leave some room for emerging factors, because we're continuing to learn, and we expect as we add in more things like wearables and are tracking more biometrics, that there will be other factors that contribute to change. And the thing is that these measures, essentially, if you only take one brain health index, it really doesn't tell us very much. It gives us the most information when you take multiple, a second index, a third, a fourth. Those time points every 6 months is what is most valuable to the research study and to the data, because we're interested in seeing how these things change over time, how they change in response to training and coaching and your habits. And so from that, we formed these kind of 3 big buckets. And so I'll touch on them just briefly. You can see it's obviously written on the slide, but connectedness, this includes things. So if you've taken the assessment, we ask about your social support, compassion, your engagement in activities, things like happiness, resilience, how many meaningful activities you participate in. And then clarity is really more strategic attention, your ability to focus your attention and be strategic in your thinking, a lot of higher level thinking like abstraction and reasoning, these frontal lobe functions, and then memory, sleep, and compassion shows up again for clarity. And then emotional balance is what it sounds like, but looking at symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, and then sleep shows up there as well. The neural systems that we're measuring, there is a small percentage of the participant population that is getting brain imaging, and they're local to the DFW area, and they come in every year to get their brain scan. And so we're looking at things like brain blood flow, white matter integrity, cortical thickness, and then hemodynamic response, which we're going to touch on later in this presentation. So all of these together make up your overall brain health index. But then what's really unique is the fact that you get to see how each of these things individually are changing over time. So you can really attribute what, if your score is increasing from one round to the next, you can see maybe what's driving that, or maybe if it's decreasing, what's also pulling it in that direction. So it really gives you a clearer picture of maybe areas that you want to focus on or areas of strength that you can also lean on and leverage to help you in your daily life. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Lori.
Great, thank you. So as we mentioned, one of the things we wanted to accomplish in this call was to acquaint you with some of the papers, publications that have so far come out of the project data. So these are things that you all have been contributing to as participants directly. And just a reminder too, we continue to make these publications as they come out, even available. You can access through our Center for Brain Health website. And in fact, at the end of the webinar today, we'll include a QR code that'll link you directly to the newest one that we'll take a deeper dive into today around some of the initial imaging results. But let me speak to one of the papers that came out that looks at a particular dimension. Many of you may recall in your BrainHealth Index, we do have measures in there that are focused on mood. So, really contributing especially to that emotional balance factor. So in particular, one of our researchers here is very interested in what is the impact, for example, of this cognitive strategy training on symptoms associated with depression, anxiety, high stress. Do we see that there might be, a potential impact or generalization to some of those aspects of brain health? And so this paper was an initial sort of a pilot study. Again, this was focused on that very first group of participants, just like the same folks that were reported in our pilot paper that Julie just talked about. So again, these were folks that really came on board right at the onset of the pandemic. So keeping that in mind as well. But we're really encouraged. So this included about 150 individuals. And we did see some improvements in self-reported symptoms associated with depression, anxiety, and stress. And in this initial cohort, none of these were individuals who had, uncontrolled diagnosed psychiatric conditions. So there is that caveat. But it was really encouraging for us, not only because of some of that initial gain, but also looking at it down the line. 6 months later, we were seeing some continued improvement or maintenance of gains. Click again, Julie, if you don't mind. So the takeaway, and again, this being a pilot study that really motivated future study, if you'll go back, is that even this top-down approach, this cognitive strategy approach using SMART, may be a tool to help those who are experiencing some symptoms of psychological distress. So we say preclinical. In other words, these were not people with clinical diagnoses per se. I think many of us, especially during the onset of the pandemic, would likely resonate with experiencing some symptoms that would be, could be associated with these things. But it was, I think particularly evident in the context of some of those more depression or stress related symptoms. So this has really motivated us to pursue some extended study. And in fact, the lead researcher here, Sarah Lonnie, her dissertation work is focusing on a similar question, but looking at the larger project now that we, also include folks who maybe do have diagnosed mental health conditions. So we can really, put a finer lens on comparing, does this hold up for those who do have clinical symptoms, as well as those who don't, really better understanding some of those nuances. So a lot more research to come in this domain, but some encouraging findings so far. Next slide. Another aspect you'll remember when we talked about the BrainHealth Breakthroughs, really being interested in some applications at scale, or thinking about groups that have a shared context. For example, like individuals who are all working at a particular company, right, in a particular workplace, for example. And here's one of those really exciting collaborations where the BrainHealth Project has really allowed us to move this forward. This is a paper that came out last year that comes from our Brain Healthy Workplace initiative. And you can see there, we actually partnered with an international architectural design firm called HKS. Again, they have offices all over the globe and even participants that were all over the globe here. But they engaged, in the BrainHealth Index, the different training aspects. And again, we really saw an encouraging finding here. About 75% of the participants showed gains on their brain health index, as well as some of these individual brain health factor areas around clarity, connectedness, emotional balance. And we really looked at the impact of the training itself. So if they were more engaged using the training and engaging with those tools, really seeing that play a role in the benefits that they got out of it. We were also interested in this study to look at the association with burnout. Burnout is a big topic, especially in the context of the workplace, particularly during these recent pandemic years. And there was an association found in this work between the brain health factors and aspects of reduced burnout. So we used a commonly used measure called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. And in particular, looking at things around occupational exhaustion or kind of depersonalization towards the workplace. These were elements that we saw some association between some of these gains around these brain health factors. So bottom line, our bottom statement there is that this really did support the potential for brain health capacity building training to benefit employee brain performance, as well as mental health. And this is also kind of setting the stage for some of the questions we hope to explore in regard to brainomics. So again, considering the economic, the societal, and of course, individual benefits to help communities boost collective brain health and even what we would say brain capital. So really investing in not just their brain skills, but also their brain health. That's going to really allow folks to thrive, experience that productivity, that purpose and positivity. So again, a lot more work to come, but I think some exciting avenues that have been afforded through the BrainHealth Project. All right, next slide.
Okay, so we're getting into now some of our latest discoveries. Thank you for an excellent recap of just some of those recent papers. It's really great to see just the different areas that we're able, there's just so much that we're able to really learn. And so we recruited our friend, Dr. Ben Ryan. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has a large presence on social media, and he's excellent at breaking down complex science and explaining it in a really easy to understand way. And so you're gonna have to let me know if you can hear this, because I don't remember if when I shared my screen, I actually don't think that I checked the box that I needed to.
The Center for Brain Health just published a new study where they identified specific
You can?
I can hear it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Cool. Well, I'll hit play, and basically he's just going to give us a quick recap, and then Lori and I are going to give more context and hopefully help you understand this. Full disclaimer, neither Lori or I are the brain imaging biostatisticians that did this. So we are going to do our best to just explain it at a high level of what you need understanding. But if you're the type that likes to dig deep, we're going to give you the link to the paper directly, as well as a summary of it on our website. So just know that we want to answer your questions. We may just not be able to answer extremely in-depth ones, but we'll at least give you a good idea of what was found. All right, so here's Ben.
BrainHealth just published a new study where they identified specific neuromarkers that could predict how much someone will benefit from cognitive trainings. Let's break down the study. The researchers invited 48 people to the lab to get a brain scan while they played sort of a game. While in the scanner, they were shown a pattern on a screen very briefly to activate their visual cortex. When they saw it, they were instructed to press a button with both thumbs to activate the motor cortex. Then they took SMART training, and 6 months later, they redid these same brain scans. So when a brain area is activated, the neurons demand more glucose and oxygen, sort of like your muscles when you're exercising. Because of this, blood flow in that area temporarily increases to provide those nutrients before returning to baseline. This activity-dependent increase in blood flow is called the hemodynamic response function, and this is what they measured in the study using fMRI. Amazingly, the researchers found that just based on how this HRF looked, they could predict how large of an improvement the person would show after taking the Center for Brain Health SMART training. They used a machine learning algorithm, and it gets pretty complicated, but here's what it boils down to. The hemodynamic response function, or HRF, did not look the same for everyone. Across the 48 participants, they saw a variety of patterns. But the researchers found that they could be grouped into a few different types. And depending on what type of HRF you showed at baseline, if they saw certain changes after training, they could very accurately predict how much your cognitive scores would increase. This is exciting because it brings us one step closer to precision brain health and the ability to better predict individual brain trajectories or inform personalized treatment approaches. Asking people how they feel can only get us so far, but having objective measurements from someone's brain that tell us about their brain health can be much more accurate and meaningful. I'm looking forward to seeing the follow-up studies that I'm sure the center is already working on.
Okay, so that was a lot, but we're gonna break it down a little bit more. So this is the paper. I'm actually, before I put more words on the screen, so we mentioned earlier hemodynamic response. So hemodynamic, hemo being blood, dynamic meaning changing, and response is response. And so really just how your neurons, your brain cells are demanding glucose and oxygen, and the rate at which that is able, your blood flow and brain and body is able to make that happen is what we're talking about here. So consider this a measure of really blood flow to the brain, specifically to the neurons, during a task. And then as he showed, which we'll show in a second, that everyone has a slightly different hemodynamic response, and that this hemodynamic response was able to predict changes specifically on the factor of clarity. So this is really exciting because it's able to take this, as he said, kind of this objective marker of brain function and brain performance and connect it to a more behavioral thing, like we talked about the elements of clarity, which are things like strategic attention, reasoning, memory, sleep, right? These everyday aspects of our life, and establish this relationship that ideally is predictive, right? And so that this is giving us a sense of a way to really move towards this precision brain health that we talk about, of being able to see, like, because we know that what I need is different than what Lori needs and each of you. And so it kind of brings to light just how unique each brain is and how it works. And then what the results are then, based on training or based on our measurement using the BrainHealth Index and specifically the different factors like clarity. So yeah, this is really just early stages of a novel biomarker. And I say early stages just because it's like just the first one, and we're going to continue learning more about it for looking at predictive aspects of brain gain. The other reason that this is so exciting is because typically, if you look in the literature or just in general in the world, everyone is interested in finding markers of disease. They're looking for early detection. They're looking for plaques. They're looking for, certain levels of things. They're looking for decline. And so this is the first marker that's really focused on looking at gain. So that's a huge distinction here. So again, yeah, just this summary sentence here is that these results are just showing how we can use brain imaging to track cognitive capacities in healthy states, not just clinical states, and that use machine learning approaches to take steps towards precision brain health, which again, we want this accurate prediction of individual brain health trajectories. So we want to be able to predict where you're going and then how we could support you along the way. So he showed this in his video, but this is kind of a perfect quote unquote hemodynamic response function. And so basically just showing that, like, as there is the demand for blood flow, this is the type of response that you see. And then as you saw, on this next slide, actually, that Lori's going to explain a little bit more, you'll see that there's quite a variety, that this is, a textbook one, but nothing in real life is ever like it is in the textbooks. And so there's a lot more variety to it, and I'll let Lori explain a little bit more.
Yeah, again, without going into too much detail, essentially, what Julie just showed you, as she mentioned, is sort of the textbook hemodynamic response function. So you'll see that abbreviated as HRF, not only here, but also in a lot of the literature. And so one of the unique things about the study, and really the amazing researchers behind the statistical work, is they were essentially able to identify a way to see, individuals' benchmark or baseline hemodynamic response function, before engaging in these various brain health supports, namely especially the cognitive training here. And so based on what their benchmark was, it would actually help predict at a really substantial level. This was to have a 90% prediction rate is really remarkable for these kinds of metrics. But it was essentially able to predict with great success, the gains in that clarity aspect. So between that time 1 and time 2. So for example, those who had in this case, a high benchmark, something that was a little less canonical, those gains really were predicted by changes in a couple different features of their curve. Whereas those who started with that more textbook, the low benchmark, their gain would strongly be predicted by a decrease in the amplitude of it. So again, not to speak to all the specific mechanisms of why this or that, but one thing that I was really struck by in terms of some of the implications of this, the idea that it's really giving us a window into the fact that, again, no two brains are the same, but there are different mechanics by which that improved performance occurs, so the brain is operating in different ways, just according to different sort of benchmark states, right? Whether that be your age or a particular disease state or not. It's really amazing to see how dynamic, adaptable the brain is to really support that gain. So this is novel ground. Again, truly looking at it through the lens of gain enhancement and exploring those possibilities and how we can not only better understand those mechanisms, but in turn really better inform, what are going to be the pathways that are really going to be meaningful for any one individual. So again, back to that idea of precision brain health. This is an important first step to that goal. Next slide. So again, for those of you that really geek out about the science here, like have questions and want to just kind of be able to read and maybe dig into this, you are more than welcome to go access the paper directly. The QR code, if you scan it, it'll take you right to that place on our Center for Brain Health website, where you can read a little overview, see a couple of those visuals, but then you can click a link to access the journal where the publication is accessible online. This is not the only paper we have on our website, so I encourage you to really explore, some of the other papers that have come out of this work, as well as, if there are other topics that you're curious about. We have a lot of great research that is described as well as linked directly through our website. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah, all of the papers that we shared with you today are on the website. So you'll see up at the top, if you click on published research, you'll be able to sort through the whole list of them. I think this is done. Sorry, Lori, I just chimed in, but it's
no, actually, I was going to pass it over to you, but I'm more than happy to jump in as well, because
no, you're good. We'll go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, honestly, when we talk about next steps, I know Julie gave you one insight into some of those pieces as we look at the possibility of better understanding some of these more real-time metrics, that are being collected through wearables, looking at physical activity. A component we didn't talk about that our imaging participants can also opt into is wearing the Oura ring for 6 months and sharing that data, so we can look at some of those parameters or relationships with even things like sleep, which we know can be hugely influential. So certainly looking at that. We're even bringing in other new components to look at brain activity in other ways, such as EEG, and even using some aspects of neurostimulation to better understand how the brain responds to different things. So these are some of the exciting things that are coming when it comes to some of these more real-time, real-world metrics, especially given that Brain Health Index, we're only doing it once every 6 months. So how can we better capture some of these other aspects that are happening throughout that period as well? Next slide. And again, the Brain Health Project, especially being driven through this Brain Health platform, affords us the opportunity to explore various, what we would call nested research studies as well. So whether they're studies that are focused on a particular population, I know there have been some questions around, what about, do we study some of the impacts, for example, of menstrual cycles or menopause, kind of that hormonal aspect on brain health, especially in the long term. One example of a nested study we're doing with a practicing physician is looking at the impact of, for example, hormone replacement therapy on these metrics of brain health. We have a researcher here who's working specifically with breast cancer survivors. You may have seen that we're recruiting individuals who've undergone treatment for breast cancer and are experiencing brain fog. So seeing if we can better understand and even impact that. Caregivers largely of those with mild cognitive impairment or recent diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So better understanding how we can support them. Emerging adults, we would use this to describe, individuals who are in that young adult stage in life, whether they're college aged, early career. This is really a group that we want to even engage even more in brain health, recognizing, it's never too early to be proactive and gain more insight on how you can help your brain, again, in many ways, and perform better for you. We've already talked about workplace. We also have efforts beginning here in our local communities here in Dallas to see, again, how we can make brain health more accessible, even opportunities to start exploring validating in, for example, the Spanish language, seeing what's possible for that type of translation. And then some of these complementary tools that will continue to gather data and, share research about. For example, some of you have experienced Brain HQ training. Again, this is more of a bottom-up approach to cognitive training. Aspects that maybe are more focused on diet, or again, some of these other biomarkers that we're collecting through wearables or other things that people are engaging with in some of the in-person studies. Next slide. So as a reminder, the Brain Health Project is really designed to be something that's going to continue to evolve and even spur new questions. So excited to see these breakthroughs continue and really to better understand how we can move this field of brain health forward through our knowledge and certainly through your participation. So we appreciate each of you who's contributing to this. And we hope that really getting some of these updates, learning about what we're finding, what we're discovering along the way is important to us too. So I know several of you have entered questions in the Q&A. I think we'll take a little time to answer some of those first while we're still connected. So Julie, if you want to take the first jump.
Sure. I would just want to remind everyone that if you have a technical issue, to email support@thebrainhealthproject.org. We don't want to use this time now to address those types of questions. So I thought this question was great, asking about the reasons for linking participants' general health data through the app, as I showed in the beginning. And so really, like, ideally, we are working to eventually being able to visualize that data back for you and have it integrated. So the way that I showed, kind of, we're leaving room for those emerging factors that we want to be able to integrate more of that data and then surface it and incorporate it into things like the index. So we're just not able to surface it yet, but we're in the beginning stages of, as we collect that data, then we're able to work towards that. So that's really the beginning of that. And then have had lots of questions about people really wanting to participate in imaging, because obviously this is such exciting research. And so if you're not already an imaging participant and you are a participant of the project, unfortunately, you're kind of you've already taken a baseline, you've already started training, you're already, you're not really as eligible because we need people with a clean baseline that have not done any of the training before. So the way that people, it's not just like we chose some people to do it, it's as part of the onboarding process when they basically filled out like a screening form, said that they were interested in doing that. And it's all people that are local as well. So unfortunately, if you're already into it, you've already taken an index and done training, at this time, you're not going to be able to join the imaging part. I saw that one person said that the QR code was blocked by our image, so I'm happy to drop the URL to the paper, but you can just go to centerforbrainhealth.org, our Center for Brain Health website, and search research and should be able to find it, but I'll put the direct link in there as well. Laura, did you see some questions that you wanted to answer?
Yeah, let's see. I think there was a question, since we talked about integrating wearables, and we spoke briefly about the Aura Ring being something that our imaging participants can opt into. Someone asked, can an Aura Ring currently be integrated into the BrainHealth Project?
So yes, you can. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to stop sharing the screen. Yeah, if you already have an Aura Ring on your own and you want to sync that up, you can email support@thebrainhealthproject.org and we will get that connected for you.
Yeah, I'll answer another question. I see somebody asked if we're working with people diagnosed with PTSD. Again, in the project, y'all probably remember from your own experience, we do not exclude those who have a diagnosis of PTSD. It's even one of the sort of conditions you can endorse when you're filling out that About Me section of your Brain Health Index. So yes, there are people with PTSD in the project, and yes, we have been involved in research, prior to the Brain Health Project, that has included those with PTSD, particularly military members, as well as individuals with traumatic brain injury. So yeah, it's been good to be involved in some of that work as well. But yes, it's again nice that we're able to capture folks who are coming into the project, maybe with different conditions or needs, and ultimately potentially spur some research questions that might put the spotlight on some of those aspects. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question about just the exclusion criteria for the project. There's a basic screener at the beginning that includes all of that, but I can tell you high level, it's adults ages 18 to 100 that are, if you are generally healthy. So bigger exclusion criteria would be things like having a neurological diagnosis, having something like a stroke or MS or a brain injury where you're no longer independent. So yeah, it's all sort of detailed in there. So the best thing would just be to register and fill out the screener. I think some of it I don't know if any of our exclusion criteria is listed on the brainhealthproject.org. But okay, and so this question is about having a control group. And so what's really unique about this study is that you are your own control. So it's very much a you against yourself, which is why it's so important to get that baseline measure. And we have an incredible biostatistician that does a lot of complex analysis and is able to really tease apart a lot of things, because we do have, everyone's doing different amounts of training utilization and engagement and things like that. So that is, again, we're going towards this idea of precision brain health. So it's not just like everybody all gets this exact same thing at the exact same time.
One question, and I apologize, Julie, if you already addressed this. For some of those who are curious about accessing the paper that we shared about the imaging results in particular and are following the QR code, there have been some who've said, once they've clicked on the access the paper link, when it takes you to the journal's website, that there might be some that are having some difficulty accessing the full paper. They're just able to see the abstract. So we'll follow up and see if we can answer that or provide any guidance. If not, my suggestion would be don't hesitate to email, even though the address we always share says support at the BrainHealth Project. You're welcome to email that this time and mention that you're specifically would love to have that paper, and we would have the ability to share that with you. So just to share that if you really do want to see that in its entirety.
Awesome. I'm going to address some of the questions about wearables like a Garmin watch or a Fitbit. So if those devices sync with it's Apple Health Kit or Google Fit, if those devices are feeding into that, then you can sync that with the project, but you can't just like sync it directly. And then some people were asking about BrainHQ, and so that's at a certain point in the process of training. I believe it's after your third BrainHealth Index that you get access to that training for about 6 months. So look out for that.
We just had a question come through about potential questions around exploring diet, nutrition, nutraceuticals, things like that. Stay tuned. This is an area that we really want to explore and to bring in. We have some collaborators who do kind of operate more in that research. So this is an element that we would like to have more opportunity to incorporate into the BrainHealth Project.
Awesome. We had someone ask how often we do these group calls. The town halls, we do probably once or maybe twice a year, just a couple times a year when we have new papers come out. Yeah, and then, yeah, that's really probably, there's not like a set cadence necessarily, but we try to do them probably one in the spring and one in the fall, just depending on what's going on.
Okay, I think we've really covered the majority of the questions that y'all have asked in this. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about the research that you're contributing to. And yeah, as Julie shared, this recording will be available later for y'all to access if you'd like to. And we will be doing some other town halls, as well as of course the monthly group coaching calls moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.